And that brings us to chapter 1, of course, called Nature. In this chapter, he starts to sort of posit our relationship fundamentally to what nature is exactly. He says, if the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how men would believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God which had been shown. And later on, he talks specifically. It says, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. In this, he's talking about the fact that we just take nature for granted. Like we walk outside, we walk through our houses, we walk in the forest, we drive down the street in our car. Obviously, Emerson wasn't talking about that. But in our regard, we do all of these things and we just sort of take it for granted. And, we can look up at the sky and we can see the sun and just sort of be like, okay, whatever, it's the sun, who cares? Okay, but think, if the sun were something that only showed up, once every 100 years, how amazed everyone would be at the privilege of having seen the sight. And Emerson's trying to put forth that idea here that, we shouldn't necessarily take it for granted. Most persons do not see the sun. That if we go out, we really want to, keep our eyes open and be aware of this beauty that's in the miracle of reality in nature that's sort of infused in every minute of every day. He also talks about, sort of surveying the landscape. Okay, he says if you look out at the landscape, it says Miller owns this field, Locke that, and Manning the woodland beyond, but none of them owns the landscape. I think that that's a really kind of beautiful idea because you can just be, driving down the street and you see Jack in the Box over there and McDonald's over there and Home Depot over there and somebody's house over there and, something else over there and an open field over there and say, oh, this belongs to that person, this belongs. But nobody owns the landscape itself, that all of us are privy and capable of enjoying and taking advantage of this sort of like wondrous thing that presents itself before us at all times, and that fundamentally nature is a democratic element that belongs to everyone. You can see the romance in that idea. He says, standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing, I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. This is really getting into that idea that if you make yourself part of nature, if you go out in the world and just sort of like stand there and survey everything that's going on around you, you will be able to sort of recognize and appreciate this massive beauty. That idea of becoming the transparent eyeball. It sounds weird, but in sort of a beautiful sense, if you really become one with the nature that's around you, you are this transparent eyeball. You're just sort of like the universe is pummeling you with its data and its beauty and its magnificence, and you're just sort of there to experience it. So he closes this first chapter, chapter 1, by saying, nature always wears the color of the spirit. To a man laboring under calamity, the heat of his own fire hath sadness to it. In this, he's getting at that idea that nature is the truest reflection of reality as it is, and that it also is a reflection of mankind or womankind as that attitude is projected. That basically, if you go out into the world and you have a bad attitude, the universe will seem to have a bad attitude right back at you. But if you go out into the world and you see, and you have a good attitude, the universe will seem to reward you with a good attitude. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like he says, to a man laboring under calamity, the heat of his own fire hath sadness to it. So if somebody's in a bad state of mind, even the most glorious thing, the most life-giving thing can seem sad and negative. And I think that that's an important piece of advice